Hey, beautiful people. Welcome back to Unlearn with Bianca. If you're tuning in for the first time, then welcome. On this podcast, we explore everything around self-healing, health, personal growth, the mind-body connection, relationships, and more. This podcast is here to inspire you, to educate you, to challenge you so that you can deepen the connection you have with yourself. Hey guys, it has been a minute. I know this episode is coming out a little late, but I made it. I'm going to start dropping these episodes on Mondays now, guys, just to keep it easy, to keep it predictable. I have gotten into this bit of a habit putting them out on random days. So from now on, it's Mondays. So today, the topic is relationships and lessons I have learned and that I am continuing to learn through the relationships in my life. Now, relationships, by saying relationships, I am referring to all relationships. So romantic relationships, family relationships, friendships, work relationships, and any other relationship that you want to include in that category. So our relationships are a huge factor in our health. A lot of us know that loneliness is a real issue in today's world. We are so connected in terms of social media and connectivity across the globe, but a lot of people feel lonely, and that can be physical loneliness or more emotional loneliness. So that lack of intimacy or connection within our relationships that can lead us feeling alone, even if we're around people. And I'm sure we've all had that experience before when we can be around a lot of people yet still feel alone. And I've said this on another podcast, but I really think that there is a healthy balance, healthy medium between codependence and independence. Codependence is when we are overly reliant on somebody else in our life, or our state is determined by somebody else's state. Meaning, if my friend's sad, I'll naturally be sad with them. So that's sort of codependence. It's that enmeshment between someone else's state. And independence is when we have this mindset that we have to do things all alone. Boundaries are super, super strong, which can lead to a lack of connection. And it's just independence is just doing everything individually by yourself, which is generally what the Western world tends to sway towards, independence. Somewhere in the middle, there's something called interdependence, and that is when we are able to be in relationship with others. We are able to be vulnerable with others, be connected to others, but we're also able to feel secure and independent in who we are and do some things alone and feel secure in that. So I think when we're talking about relationships, we should be thinking about that middle point, and that's where I want to start. And I'm not going to be naive as to just sit here and say, what I'm about to share, this is how you should do relationships. That's just not true, because I really think we can only speak from our experience, as I've said before. For example, I have not been married, so I can't speak on that. I don't have kids. I'm sure I could learn a lot in both of those areas, but we all have our lessons that we've learned, and I have some core lessons that I have learned that I'm still practicing that I think you guys will resonate with and you'll take something from. And I'm going to be real with you. As I was doing some reflection for this podcast, I was thinking about where I've really grown. And one quality I love about myself is that I am very strong-willed. I'm very determined, which is a positive because I feel like I've always had a voice. But, there can be a downside to that too, because sometimes in the past, I would not be in the space to really hear and take on other people's advice, other people's reflections. And at times I didn't feel comfortable to sit with the discomfort that come up and then reflect on myself and adapt to take some kind of accountability. So what I've come to learn is ultimately people reflect to us what we need to learn about ourselves, whether that's in conversations, consciously, or how they act unconsciously. It's always going to be a mirror back to us about what we can do for our own growth. And I really think I've come far with this mindset. Like now, if someone is challenging me or offering advice or showing me that I'm acting in a certain way, what is being reflected back to me, I can really sit with this discomfort and learn something. And I really want to highlight and start with this point because I think it's so powerful if we can be in this mindset of being open to learn from others about ourselves. And also just being open to learn about other people in general, their beliefs, the way they work, the way they think. I think that's a really healthy mindset to have. All right, so let's get into it. Some lessons I have learned in relationships. I've got a few here, so I'm just going to bang them out. So number one, the first lesson is that the first relationship we have is the one we have with ourselves. And this means that we must prioritize getting to know ourselves, understanding ourselves. And I'm not saying, put yourself first at every single part of your life. For example, the mother of a newborn is not going to be prioritizing herself daily at the beginning. No. But I think what is really important here is that there are seasons and there are times where we need to reevaluate our needs, reevaluate our wants, reevaluate our desires, and make space for ourselves. And this is so important because how we treat ourselves will really determine how other people in our life treat us. It's as simple as that. If we go back to the mirror concept, if you have low self-esteem, people in your life will show you where you can love yourself more so you don't put up, for example, with some controlling behavior. They are going to keep reflecting those behaviors to you until you learn, I shouldn't be putting up with this. So they are your mirror. If you are somebody who is really self-critical towards yourself, you will be shown by others. They are going to be critical back to you until you learn the lesson. And this is why it's so important that we know who we are. We know our strengths, we know our weaknesses, so that we can be secure in who we are and know who should be in our life and maybe who shouldn't be in our life. And I understand that there's some relationships in our life that we don't get to choose. However, I truly, truly believe that a lot of the relationships we magnetize or who we allow to stay in our life or who comes in and out of our life is a reflection of the relationship we have with ourselves first. So that is the first point. We have to work on the relationship within. It does come first. I know it can sound selfish at a glance, but it is the core, the fundamental for the relationship with everyone else in your life. Number two, everybody is doing the best with the tools and the learnings that they have in that moment. And I really like to remind myself this when perhaps somebody's responding in a certain way and I'm getting frustrated. It's easier to see things through a lens of compassion and more understanding if we look at why they may be reacting or responding in the way they are. It is so easy just to see someone's actions at a glance and take that face value. And it doesn't mean that you shouldn't experience anger or frustration. It doesn't take it away from the fact that their actions are their responsibility. But when we can take a situation one step further by taking that time to think about why they may be responding that way, it can offer a sense of compassion towards that person, because I always remind myself, hurt people hurt people. The pain people go through also causes people to protect themselves. So sometimes the ways that they're responding are just coping mechanisms. And until we learn and we're open to learning a different way of showing up, different information, different knowledge, people are going to only be operating from what they know at that point in their life. Okay, number 3 of lessons I've learned in relationships, the body knows. So start listening to it. The body knows when people are not for us. The body knows when places and spaces and things are not for us. And, it could be something as simple as you keep meeting someone and once you leave that interaction, you feel really tired, or you get a funny tummy, that sort of angst in your stomach. You might feel like you're walking around on eggshells around somebody consistently. These are cues from the body. You can even hold it in your shoulders. that is a cue that you are not feeling safe with that person. So my advice here is be discerning and become attuned to the cues in your body. Who do you feel relaxed around? They are the people you want to be in relationship with. Trust yourself. Trust yourself with this one because your body is more intelligent than you realize. Follow those signs. And I think sometimes, we question ourselves. They're not a bad person, so why am I feeling like this? We don't have to judge good or bad. Think of it as this person is in alignment with me currently. This person is not, and that's okay. So a quote that always stuck with me around this is, to say yes to yourself, you have got to say no to others. Stop putting yourself in situations where your body is giving you cues that it is clearly a no. If you are constantly putting yourself in positions and making choices to be with people that complain, that bring you down, that cannot regulate their own emotions, and you're doing this over time, think about what state this puts your nervous system in. So it's really up to you to become discerning, to value yourself, and know that, yes, arguments, conflict, that's all normal, but think about how your body feels consistently over time around certain people. Okay, next one. Sometimes it's not what you say, it's the energy behind it. This is something that I have had to learn. We have all had that experience where, let me think of an example. You're feeling really good one day, you walk out of the house, you've got open body language, you're feeling good in what you're wearing, you're smiling, walking around, and you project out a good energy. You will notice that you get that energy back. If you're smiling, people are going to smile back at you. If you're open to chatting, people are going to chat back to you. And it's the same in communication at that micro level. So one thing I've learned is how powerful a slight change in the way we communicate can be. If you go into a conversation tense, on the defensive, shoulders up, and go to communicate from this place, the message will be received a lot differently than if you take a breath, first of all, acknowledge someone else's perspective, and then start to share yours. So a change in the way we hold our body, a change in the tone, a change in the pace, the way we communicate, all of these things can make a real difference. So you can be saying the same words, but think about the energy behind what you are saying. And ladies, if you've ever had this experience, I used to be a bit guilty of this in the past. If you are coming from a place of critiquing and frustration, it's never going to work when you communicate. So again, what is the energy? Think about the energy behind what you're saying. Another example might be if you often find yourself going into over-explaining and sharing why you feel the way you do. Again, something I have done a lot of in the past. Sometimes you need to just change your approach, cut it short, and be more simple and straight to the point. And again, can be the same thing you're trying to get across, but just communicated differently and received differently on the other side. All right, next lesson. What are we up to? One person cannot be your village. This is a big one. And this applies to romantic relationships, friendships, even family. We, I think, often expect people to fulfill a need that we're looking for, or we expect someone to make us happy. We expect one person to have everything that we want, that they'll be the, especially in relationships, the perfect person. But that is not possible because we're all human. And I really had a wake up call with this when my mum passed, because I relied on her a lot as a friend, as a mum, as my go-to for everything. So what I really learnt after her passing is that I needed to start relying on different people to or letting myself rely on different people to fulfill different things for me, and really be grateful for the quality that each person was bringing into my life. For example, you might have a friend that is the go-to when you want a light-hearted, funny conversation. You also might have a friend that brings in a sense of depth, or they're a really good listener. You might have a partner that is really good at acts of service. So all of these people can bring something different to us. And I think so often we, again, just expect so much of one person, and we block off connections. What if I open up to more people? Will I lose that friend? You know, we can become quite protective of the relationships we already have. So remember that if new people come into your life, they don't have to bring everything. They might just bring one quality that you could do with. And I really love thinking about relationships like this, because we've really lost that village mentality where we have a lot of support, extended family. We live in close proximity. A lot of us don't these days, to family and friends. So thinking about what you can add to someone's life, of course, first, but also not putting so much pressure for people to be everything. Go looking for different people to bring other elements. Be open to new connections for different people to bring different things into your life. All right, guys. Okay, next point. The doorway to connection is vulnerability. I love that quote. The doorway to connection is vulnerability. I think most of us would agree that we want those relationships where we really feel like we can be ourselves. We want relationships where we can go deep if we want to, where we can be vulnerable. I think to get to this point, it really requires us to get honest with ourselves. And this is a big one, because something I've really practiced over the years is just getting real with myself. No emotion is a bad emotion. I think if we stay in an emotion for too long, it can obviously impact us. However, it's about building that emotional capacity. How do we really get honest with ourselves? We just start sitting with the discomfort. We start asking ourselves the hard questions. Are you really happy? Is this what you want? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? I think the more we can start to really get self-reflective and get to know ourselves again, it comes back to that. The more we start to align with people that can also do that aren't afraid of the bigger emotions, that can see you as you are fully. And I think something I've been thinking about is sometimes we're scared to feel those big emotions. They're not too big. You don't feel too much, but something I used to feel for myself is the capacity to feel the emotion was too small, because I wouldn't really allow myself. I'd just try and have this like perfected version of myself and wouldn't really sit with any negative stuff. So it's about starting to acknowledge and sit with discomfort when it comes up, knowing it will pass, knowing that it's just human, to be able to get real with ourselves. And when we can come from that place, that is when we start to connect at that deeper level. And just remember that you're human, we're all human, we all have the same fears. As I work with clients, I realize that everyone I see comes with the same sort of fears. So do remember that. So to round out that point, if we are wanting those deeper, more vulnerable connections, we have to practice that with ourselves first, and then practice that with other people. And just getting used to the discomfort of doing something different, of acting in a different way, and being brave. Okay, next point. I've lost track of what number we're up to. There is such thing as over-empathizing. We have to have discernment. We can spend so much time, especially if you are naturally someone who has an empathetic side, who is giving, caring. We can spend a lot of time and energy empathizing with other people. And that leads to taking responsibility for their emotions. You can do that at a practical level and go into care and to help and to take something off someone's plate, which again can be really useful, can also not useful if you're doing that to your own detriment and it's impacting your health. The issue is when you empathize and give so much that you're doing it beyond a practical level. You're mentally and emotionally and energetically giving it all of your energy when you are just sitting down in silence. Your energy is still on other people, what you can do for other people, what responsibility you think you must take for other people. And that's draining. that is draining. So point that I have learned on this is, yes, there is responsibility and empathy in a practical way, but we've got to be mindful of where we're doing it beyond that. And as I said at the start, empathy is a beautiful thing. Caring, being loving, giving is a beautiful thing. We just have to give, if you're relating to this, we have to give ourselves that as well. And remember that if we are being present to life, present in a situation, we have to cut the thoughts about everybody else's stuff. We have to be present in the moment instead. And this just takes consistent practice of that letting go of needing to be over responsible and overgive. Next point, encouraging somebody to be entirely themselves is the loudest way to love them. This is something I have definitely learned over the years. We should stop looking for potential in others, especially romantic relationships. We need to stop expecting people to change and allow them to show up as they are in that moment. And we need to stop projecting and expecting people to fulfill the vision we have for them. For example, if you think that you can see a really amazing path for someone with great intentions, you expect them to follow that and hold that sort of internal expectation on them. It just wastes energy. So much of our frustration comes from people not acting the way we think they should. It's okay to hold multiple truths. I think when it comes to, relationships, we can often get quite black and white, and people think there's a right and a wrong and a truth and a false, but really, there's so much of that gray area. But what I've learned, and look, I might be a bit late to learn this, but to love people as they are, to accept them as they are in their entirety, as they are showing up in that moment, it saves you from trying to change people, which is a waste of energy. Accept their truth, accept that you can agree with one thing, not agree with the other. And I think that's where I've personally found some peace. The next one is that the longevity of a relationship does not necessarily equal success. This one I really want you to sit on, because in society we are told a long relationship is a successful one. And I don't agree with this. I mean, people come into our lives for a reason. They might be here to teach you a really hard lesson about yourself, a season. They may be here to hold your hand and guide you through a particular season, or a lifetime. And I've had experiences where people have showed up in my life to get me through a season, and that has been it. And I have been so grateful for these seasons and these people. Not everyone is meant to be in your life forever. And that's people, jobs, situations. Sometimes it can take us a while to realize that if something keeps happening, if we keep meeting the same person in a different body, or keep having the same sort of reoccurring issues within our friendships, it's a lesson that we need to learn. So if you stand back and look at the situation and ask yourself, is there something that I can change? Maybe it's as simple as creating a boundary somewhere. Maybe it's more appreciating what you do have and coming and sharing more appreciation to the people in your life. I think if we can really reflect from that place again, it's about people being mirrors back to us and seeing where we can grow in ourselves. But back to the point around reason, season, lifetime, just remember that just because people are in a relationship for a long time or they've been in a job for a long time, it doesn't necessarily mean success. I think we all know this, but sometimes it's just good to reflect on it. And yeah, that's what I want to say on that point. The next point is most conflict is 10% of the present situation and 90% of a past wound that is causing pain now. This one is pretty mind-blowing, and I did read this somewhere. I mean, people could probably argue the percentage a little bit depending on the situation. However, I do think there's merit in this point because our attachment style, what we grew up with, how we witnessed our parents relate, a whole lot of different things really forms the way we communicate and attach as we get older. So one thing that can be really beneficial is to look more into your attachment style. Know that it's a style. It can completely change. There are 4 different attachment styles. I won't go into them too much on this podcast, but there is a book called Attached. It's a pretty easy book to get through, and yeah, it's really interesting. It will share about how your attachment style may show up in your relationships, all relationships across the board, and what you can do to lean more into a secure attachment, which is what we're really aiming for. And the last point, I think I'm up to 10, maybe 11. Listen to understand. This, again, is something I have learned so much of through my relationships, and the power of just presence, of listening, of being present with somebody is so powerful. I think we've all had that experience where we just want to jump in and share our perspective or jump in and agree. But I think, again, listening is so simple and it's so underrated. Something I think we could all get into the habit of asking, which would give us so much more clarity in our relationships, is, do you want advice or do you want support? You could word it differently, but essentially, if someone says they want advice, then they want your perspective and your opinion. If they just want support, it's just a listening ear and it's just to be there while they share what is on their mind. I think there's also this additional bit, especially between men and women, different communication styles and different ways we process emotions. And this can be a really good question to think about. Do you want advice or do you want support? And it just gives clarity. So to wrap up this point, listening and just supporting and holding space is so powerful in relationships. It seems like the most simple thing, but I genuinely think it's the most powerful thing. And give advice when somebody has asked for it, and it will be appreciated. And sort of like I said at the start of this podcast, advice is only coming through your lens. So remember that when you're receiving people's advice as well, to disregard the things that don't resonate with you, just as you should be doing on this podcast too. Okay, guys. That is today's episode done and dusted. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope this gave you something to think about. As always, please follow, please rate this podcast, message me with your reflections. Recently, for me, things have really picked up at work due to some opportunities I've had, some podcasts I've been on, meaning that I am booked out now until June with the lightning process. If you are interested, if you're interested in my work, listen to the other episodes. If you need support and you're stuck dealing with ongoing chronic symptoms, please do reach out or book a free call through my website. I'm in the midst of putting together another offering at the moment, so I can't wait to share that with you guys when it's all done. It should be done in July, which is getting pretty close. And then I'm off away overseas for a month. So I'm looking forward to that. Have a beautiful week, everyone. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to the next episode.